Thanks. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We are so honored that you are here. This is our very first screening of the film, so you were the first people to see it. So I am producer, director, and this is my co-producer, Emily, who you may recognize from the film. And we wanted to give a chance to give a little bit more details into what you saw and then open it up for Q&A. So to kick us off, Emily, can you tell us a little bit more about the plan itself? It mentions the 20 targets, but I know there are a bunch of additional plans underneath those targets, and it gets really detailed, and there's a budget and there's a whole vision for this resilience plan. So if you can give us a little bit about that.
Sure, thanks. So I was working with CREED, the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica, for about 4 years, trying to turn this plan into something real. So thinking about what is it that ministries are doing already, what are communities doing already, what are small businesses doing already, how can we build on that? So for every one of those 20 targets, there's a sort of subset of actions and sub-targets and milestones that need to be achieved. And they're all incredibly ambitious. So one of them, for example, is that if there is, the next time there's an extreme weather event, the economy will not contract by more than 5%. Now that might not sound like very much, but these, as you could see from the film, these tropical cyclones, hurricanes have a massive impact. So to ensure that the economy doesn't contract by more than 5%, you need to have, like, small businesses will need to have reserves, some kind of savings. They'll need to have access to insurance. Households will need to have access to insurance. Tourist sites will need to have plans in place so that they can get up and running again, like, pretty quickly afterwards, because tourism is a major, like, source of income. In, like, agriculture, smallholder farmers need to have their plans in place so that they can rehabilitate infrastructure that's affected. So you can think about all the sectors and all of the sort of aspects of the economy that need to be prepared and need to have some kind of backup so that things can get going again quickly, because the impact on the economy really starts to kind of kick in if you can't get stuff moving again soon afterwards. So so it sounds like, a small thing, but actually what goes into that is huge. And, not all of that has happened yet by any means, because even just sort of getting that insurance available for households and for farmers is really tricky. There's not like, an insurance company in Dominica that's like just there ready to provide its services. And people, can't necessarily afford it. So you need to think about how that's going to be subsidized. So there's a lot to think about. And that's just one of the targets.
Thank you. That's helpful. So one of the reasons that I found this story and the work that Emily's been doing and what CREED has been doing to be so compelling is that it's truly a whole of society, whole of government resilience plan. And this is the kind of thing that everywhere we're going to need. And Dominica's been doing this for the last 5 years, which is really impressive, and they have a truly actionable plan. So for me, getting the story out was important for demonstrating what that can look like, not just for Dominica, even though it's very important, but because we need blueprints, we need examples of what this kind of holistic approach to resilience looks like. And so that's a big reason why I came on to do this story, and it's been an amazing journey to be on. The other reason that it really compelled me is that there's an amazing group of people who have made this happen. And so being able to highlight that and the work that everyone we talked to and a whole host of other people was very important. So I wanted to do one more question before we open it up. Give us a little bit of a sense of where we go from here. Like, what's the next step in the journey that Dominica's on?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of this is underway already, and there are some great projects, some great initiatives. Some of the big ones, rebuilding roads, rebuilding housing, is going to take a really long time. And I think as the Prime Minister, mentioned in his very passionate speech at the UN, you can't kind of give up on these things. It grabs the headlines when it happens, and you look at the devastation, and there's a kind of this visual impact, and there's a lot of attention and support. But actually recovery, takes place over like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It doesn't stop happening, really. So part of the next step is to sort of keep supporting countries on this journey, because it's actually in recovering from an event that we see the most progress sometimes in preparing for the next one. It's very difficult to be thinking about a future impact from climate change if when nothing's happened recently. People forget very quickly. So I think part of it is investing in that vision, investing in Dominica's story and getting behind that. That in terms of Dominica, but I suppose more broadly for all small island developing states, there's a big issue, as one of the interviewees mentioned, in accessing finance. These are very small countries. They're not seen as good investment opportunities. It costs a lot of money to do development projects in these small countries because everything costs more. You've got to import it. Some of them are very remote as well, particularly in the Pacific. So I think it's about paying attention to the very specific needs of small island developing states, seeing them as a different category of country, where the costs are going to be higher, but where there's more of an urgent need. We've got to get on with this now. We can't be thinking about adaptation to climate change in 10, 15, 20 years' time. And some of it's going to be very expensive, particularly protecting coastlines. If you think about how much it costs to build seawalls and protect people from sea level rise and flooding in the coastal areas, that needs to start happening now. We need to see sustained finance going into supporting these countries, even though they're small, and even though these are not massive populations. You can't say, we've covered millions of people, because there's not millions and millions of these are small populations, but they are highly vulnerable, and they're the people we should have at the forefront of our minds when we're thinking about adapting to climate change and preparing for the worst impacts.
I think that one of the other reasons that it's a powerful opportunity is that there's a lot of innovation in this space. Those who are on the front lines have so many ideas that can be shared for how to do this kinds of resilience and adaptation. And so that's part of the reason this whole idea of a blueprint really drives a story. It's also, I think, one of the things I find really interesting about it is, even though it's a whole country, it's small, and has the ability to sort of transfer to a city size when it comes to the kinds of approaches and the innovations around that. And that's everywhere in the world. And so I actually think a lot of adaptation and resilience has to be done on the city level anyway. So making those through lines and connections to islands being on the front lines of the changing climate, where innovation and opportunity lies, and investment there is investment in the rest of the world, the kinds of things we need. So this concept of blueprint was really strong for us in thinking about this. This is about our collective future and the kinds of opportunities that this island provides. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and we're going to start right here. Let me just see if there's a mic coming. Is there a mic? Yes, I think it's coming. Give it one moment. Yes, we got one right here.
Thank you. Hi, this was a really powerful documentary. Thank you guys for creating it. 1.5 questions. The first one is, getting money for projects like this is just really hard. And oftentimes with projects like this, you're like in this constant sort of striving for getting funding. So I heard in one part that they were talking about using geothermal energy. And so is there a regenerative part of the plan where you're creating funds for Dominica that is going back into the economy so that it's sort of like a virtuous cycle and you're not always relying on external funders? And the second question, sorry for the second question, is I love the idea of this being a blueprint for the rest of the world, because you're right, the rest of the world's going to need it. What do you think are the biggest obstacles, aside from money, for other countries to be able to adopt something like this?
I'm going to take the first one.
Okay, yeah, on the first question, I think one of the things that we talk about quite a lot is mitigation projects. So when it comes to like investing in renewable energy, there's definitely more of a business opportunity there. So you can clearly see why the private sector would want to come in and help to develop geothermal energy in Dominica, because it's something that can then, as was mentioned in the film, be sold to other countries and provide energy for the rest of the Caribbean, potentially. So you can see that the upfront investment that's needed, and it is significant, will produce some returns. It's a lot harder with the adaptation and resilience projects. It's a lot harder when you think about sort of protecting people and helping people to recover after climate shocks, whether that's investing in infrastructure or education or projects to preventative health projects. To see the kind of the immediate return, you have to think a bit in a different way as a sort of social return, really, because it's not going to produce profits. Except that, obviously protecting the economy, protecting people from these extremes means that the country can continue to grow, can continue to develop agriculture, tourism, innovative niche products in a way that it won't be able to if, every time there's a storm, they get knocked back, and every time they have to start all over again. So I think you've got to take the long view when it comes to thinking about whether or not there will be a return, whether the investment will produce kind of benefits when it comes to this sort of protective adaptation and resilience projects. And that's one of the things that the small island developing states talk a lot about in the international negotiations, that for adaptation it should be highly concessional finance. So imagine like finance that you do have to repay, but a very, very low interest rate. For mitigation projects, for these kind of renewable energy projects, they could be at full market rates because they'll produce a return. And then for what they call like loss and damage, which is really just coping with the impacts, dealing with the impacts because they can't be mitigated, they can't be adapted to, then we should be talking about pure like grant finance, so development assistance. So that's sort of broadly how people are talking about it and breaking it down. But yeah, not everything is going to produce benefits, which make it sort of attractive to private investors. Mm-hmm.
And I'll take your second question. I think one of the primary barriers is perception. I think it's one of the reasons we're doing this film. I think there's a perception that the islands don't have the kinds of the kinds of ideas that would be adoptable in other places. So getting a sense of that, understanding the diversity of challenges and solutions that they have, helping to sort of build that collective voice, which has very much been happening in the last several years. And I think that's helped. But I think storytelling, as the storyteller, that's going to be my answer. Next question.
Really quick before I take the next question, I would so kindly like to remind everyone in the back of the room that because of the space we're in, sound really does travel. So if you are not part of the conversation up here, I would kindly ask if we could just use a bit of quieter voices so that we can enjoy this conversation. Thank you. Peace and love. Who is next?
Hi, so I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for showcasing and highlighting my island. So I'm from Dominica, and I'm very, very happy that you're shedding a light on what it is we have been experiencing for so long, the challenges that we have faced, especially with hurricanes that we get year in, year out. 2017, that was the most severe after Hurricane David, but what I experienced in my lifetime. And it was very heartbreaking for those who experienced it on island. And I know you highlighted some of the destruction we experienced, but I mean, for those who were on the ground, it was even more severe than what came through on this. So I want to commend you for really shedding light on what we were dealing with in the island, and on the efforts that we're making in trying to make Dominica the most resilient country. And we're a resilient people, and we will always bounce back. But your efforts here today, and I know what you're going to do and continuing to show this film or this documentary will have an impact. So thank you very much.
And I just want a quick reminder, we have about 3 more minutes.
So, will there be a climate blueprint next nation? And if so, where else would you like to take this model?
Thanks for that question. So this is actually the first in a series of films about small island developing states. And we are looking to go to the Pacific next, to Vanuatu, to showcase their work on ecocide and our systems of global accountability. And then our goal is to go back to the Caribbean and do one on Barbados and the leadership of Mia Motley for the future of global financial systems. There has been incredible leadership coming out of the islands, and so part of the vision of the series and the blueprint that they are providing is to showcase that leadership in very tangible ways. And there's been incredible work done on this, but it's different when you get to see place and people. So we're really wanting to just bring the work that's already being done and that is sort of in being disseminated to have that tangible, human, story-forward communication to help it broaden its scope and really highlight the incredible work that's been done for a long, long time. The islands have been leading on the climate conversation from the beginning, and we just want to keep showcasing that. Yeah. Next question.
Hello. So I wanted to ask, this is for both of you, and first I wanted to express gratitude with y'all covering this because this is so important. We need to talk about climate resilience and how communities are that backbone of resiliency. So how do you see that urban indigenous youth and vulnerable communities are that bridge for resiliency and contributing to it? This comes from someone who is an urban indigenous youth living in Lenape-Hoking, aka NYC, and first generation immigrant. My family is from Nigeria, as you know, like we were a British colony, and I really envision going back home and bringing just that energy of like, we have to be the ones that are steering the change back home. So how do you see that as like the bridge, the actions that is taken and that is being contributed towards climate resiliency? Yeah.
Thanks for that question.
Okay. Sorry if it wasn't specific. It was just like
No, that's great.
Okay. Thank you.
So the first thing that comes to mind actually comes from work that I've done throughout my whole career. I've had the opportunity to share stories with people who have specifically returned to their communities to be leaders in their communities. And I find that process incredibly powerful and some of the most amazing work done by those who have had the chance to learn in different regions of the world and take their insight, their unique perspective, their unique experience back into their communities and adapt it in the way that makes the most sense for them. I think that that is one of the most powerful ways to do development. And I think there can be more of that done specifically to climate, specifically to resilience and adaptation. I've seen it in other topics, but I think it's the opportunity that hopefully we can see more of.
Yeah, and if I might just add to that, I mean, I think one of the really powerful things about this film is, even that we're showing it here, it's kind of, what can we learn in this city and from example of what's happening in a small developing country in the Caribbean, not the other way around, right? This is not like messages from New York or from London to the developing world. This is how you should do things. It's actually like turning it on its head, and I think that's really powerful and really important. We need to do more of that. Knowledge sharing doesn't just go in that direction, it comes in this direction as well. And so that's, what I love about being involved in this work.
Thank you so much.
We've got a question up here in the front. Right.
This film was incredible. Thank you so much for just the time and the effort. And yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And I just had a question to kind of piggy off this series that you guys are planning. Do you have plans to continue the story with Dominica to see kind of the progress and how things are continuing as you go on this journey to different developing nations?
Great question. We don't have plans for that, but yes. Of course.
I'd love to go back, if not before, in 2030, because that's the plan, isn't it? Become the first climate resilient nation by 2030. What does that mean? What does that look like in 2030? How well is Dominica doing? Is it, can they look back and say, this is everything that we've done, and we've faced hurricanes since then, and we're in much better stead now. We don't feel so vulnerable. So I mean, that would be great, and I'd love to document that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think we have time for one more question, and it's right here in the front.
Just reiterating the thanks. It was incredible, very moving. So thanks for the work you both did, and everyone else in this room. But what was the response from the Prime Minister and his passionate speech to the United Nations?
Like after he gave that speech?
Not just that day, too, right? But like after, in the years that followed, what has happened? The United Nations leaders
I see, yeah.
and any kind of response from other countries.
I mean, you want to?
So we got, one thing the Caribbean really pulled together. There were a lot of events organized just to support Dominica, a lot of funds from external agencies, other countries, the UK, even the US as well. They all supported Dominica. We had military help from other countries. So we had this outpouring of support on the island to help us get back on our feet.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to give a little bit of a preview of where we're headed from here, since, like I said, this is the very, very first screening you all are sharing in with us. So we're taking the film to COP28 in Dubai. We're going to be doing a screening in London. And the whole point is we want to get this story to decision makers because we need to capitalize this resilience plan. So my, not ambitious plan at all is just to move $2.5 billion to Dominica so that it can just happen. So that's the mission, and that's what we're here to do, because it's possible. I think that's the main thing. Is like it's possible. There's a plan, and this is a story of what it looks like when there's hope and when there's a vision and when people rally around what a future can look like. So we're gonna take it wherever it needs to go in order for that to happen. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, and I think, as well as the leaders, the decision makers, I want to share this as much as possible with the community and the Dominica diaspora in the UK as well, and so that people can see that this is a really great example. There's a lot that we can learn from Dominica. We can get the general public interested, people who might not come to an event like this, who are not thinking about climate change and what the impacts are already. They think it's something that's happening in the future, or they don't really understand that this is a huge issue, and that small islands are right at the front line of this issue, and we need to start caring and thinking about it now. So yes, the high level decision makers, but I think we need to get the public behind it as well, so that they put pressure on their leaders. And I think this week at the General Assembly, we see as we do every year, a lot of rhetoric around what needs to happen and finance that needs to be mobilized, but we really need people to get behind it, because otherwise our leaders, our decision makers will backtrack on stuff. So that's really important. We need everyone to care.
Well said. Thank you. And my final piece is that not only is this our first screening, it is the screening which we have our team in the room. So if you were part of making this film happen, please stand up. My incredible team. We have a few others that couldn't make it, but this is the bulk of the team and the incredible work that went into making this story possible. And I am incredibly grateful to work with every one of them. And I am very grateful to each of you for coming out and sharing this story with us. It is not currently available online, but will come out, and you can share it with your friends and family then. Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.